Hey guys, my name's Ariel Tabak. I'm here with Hamish, and today we're going to be looking at the very fundamentals of the Bullfighter or Toreando pass. So what we're going to be doing with the Bullfighter pass, we're going to basically break it down into a bunch of segments. We're going to look at just a very broad overview of what the Bullfighter pass is, and then we're going to start to break it down in like an order of sequence of events. So the first thing we need to do is to deal with our opponent's leg pummeling. So we're trying to clear his feet from either our hips, our bicep, or if they're like hooking under our armpit or between our legs. Then from there, we're looking at redirecting the hips, bringing the knees away from the torso, and then the various ways we can finish the pass, whether it's a leg drag, going straight to side control, or going to a north-south, and then as well covering how we can chain the passes as well. So there's different types of guard passes in Jiu-Jitsu. The Bullfighter or the leg drag is an around the legs pass, so I'm going around the legs. The knee cut is through the legs. And then we have under the legs. So going under the legs for our stack passes. So what the Bullfighter is. So Bullfighter pass is where I've got two pan grips. Let's get this side here. And the pan grips generally going to be below the knee line. I can have C grips as well. I could have two C grips. I could have two pan grips. I could have one C grip and one pan grip. And my goal generally with this pass, and you can translate the broad goals of this pass to like a lot of other guard passes in Jiu-Jitsu, is to turn the hips towards one side, pin one leg to the mat, and start to separate the highest knee away from our opponent's upper body as we start to run towards the other side that the hips are turned towards. And then connecting chest on chest and getting some kind of upper body control. So firstly, this is something that always gets a lot of people thinking. This position that we try to put people in when we pass guard, you could potentially argue that it's like the common position for almost every guard pass. So one hip pinned to the mat and one knee separated from the body, or getting one of our arms in front of this knee line. So let's actually do it to the other side so it's easier for people to see. So pinning one hip, separating the highest knee away from the torso. So where we can see this, so we have our Bullfighter pass, we have our leg drag pass, leg drag variations. You could even argue it's with a knee cut pass. Over-under passes, stack passes. Heaps of variations where we're basically trying to force our opponent into this kind of optimal guard passing position. So one thing that's important to note with how people play guard. So in this particular position here, where I'm lying on my back, with some people you'll notice that when they play guard, their lumbar spine, the lower spine, is quite flat. It's almost extended a bit. And even though I'm quite flexible myself, I know that when I play guard and I have my lumbar spine neutral, and I try and pull my knees to my chest, I can only get my knees like this far basically. If I let my lumbar spine round, if I curve my lumbar spine, see how I've got a bit of a bend in my lumbar spine? My hips are coming off the mat and I can actually get my knees really tight to my chest like so. So against someone that's playing guard like this, it's actually quite hard for the guard passer to separate the knees from the chest here. So if Hamish is on top and I'm playing like this, he tries to pull my knees away from my chest, it's actually really hard. The reason why is because once I start to lift my hips slightly off the floor, I'm not obviously trying to stack myself, but once I play here, I can really get a really good engagement of my abdominals, it's a lot easier for me to keep my knees tight to my chest here. Okay, so again, if Hamish tries to pull my knees away from my chest, I basically follow my knees really well. Now, going back to how most people play guard, this is why the Bullfighter works really, really well at the lower levels, is because a lot of people will play guard like this, where their lumbar spine is flat. And so now when Hamish tries to pull my knees away from my chest, I don't feel anything on my abdominals. It's all my hip flexors, which is a much weaker muscle. So Hamish is to pull my knees away from my chest, it's actually like really hard for me to pull them back, okay? So this is one thing that you should be wary of. Whenever you're looking to pass someone, you should look at the position of their body when they're playing guard. Okay? Again, another thing to note as well, when someone plays guard like this, it's going to be easier to potentially go under their legs, okay? But it's going to be a lot harder for someone to bullfight. If I play guard like this, it's potentially going to be harder for Hamish to go under my legs, but it may be easier for him to go around my legs, the Bullfighter pass. So this first section we're looking at is dealing with our opponent's feet. Any good guard player, before they set up a guard, they prioritize some kind of frame before they get control. So let's say, so a frame that we're looking at, for example, like the most common one, is feet on the shoulders. Now if Hamish wants to get a collar sleeve now, this is really good for him, okay? But let's say Hamish doesn't have his feet on my shoulders, and he goes for the collar sleeve now. If he doesn't have his feet in any spot where he can frame, it's actually almost detrimental to him to make these grips, because I can now start to pass the guard. So in saying this, it's obviously very important. The first thing you do as a guard player when you engage is to set your feet up in a strong position to frame, and then make your grips. In knowing that our opponent is going to try and step their feet onto our body, we need to be ready to redirect the feet and make sure that they don't hit these crucial points of our body. So as I start to enter the guard passing scenario, I'm already getting ready to deal with the feet. So if I grab on the outside like this, it's really easy for Hamish to step his feet onto my biceps. So one thing I'm going to look to do is I want to grab either on top or on the inside of the pants, and I basically want to lock out my arms, and I almost want to hang all my weight through my arms onto his legs. I'm basically trying to punch his feet into the mat like this. I'm not trying to pull back with my arms. I'm locking out my hands like so, and I'm trying to like lean back. And you can see here, if Hamish starts to really keep his knees really tight to his chest, it's going to make it a lot harder for him to maintain this. Okay, he still can keep his knees to his chest, except it's going to be, he's really going to feel it on his hip flexors and abdominals as I'm starting to lean away. When our opponent steps his feet onto our upper body, we need to swim our hands through. Now, in my experience, if someone really is trying to glue their feet to your upper body, simply trying to swim your hands to the inside to pummel can be quite hard. What you actually want is some like rotation through your spine so that you rotate towards the side that you're trying to pummel, and it's actually a lot harder for your opponent to stick his feet to your bicep or your shoulder, and you get a better angle to swim and clear the foot from your upper body. So I like to basically spin, rotate side to side on the spot so that I can easily clear the foot from the bicep. So to slowly break this down, I'm turning to one side, rotating to one side. I'm making this, like whichever arm I'm trying to clear, I'm trying to basically flop them. Yeah, I don't want to have tension going through my arms. If I really like lock up my arms and drive into Hamish, he's got like a better platform to step on, and also he's got like more feedback going through his feet, so he knows where to basically keep his feet placed in this particular position. So I relax my arms, and already when I relax my arms, Hamish probably will feel that he doesn't have like a stable surface to step on. So I relax everything in my upper body, and I turn towards the side that I'm trying to pump. So I turn towards my left, and I swim. So I go to the inside, blocking with my forearm, and then I'm trying to grip the inside of his shin to clear his foot. The reason why I go on the inside is because it's going to be really hard for someone to push back in this direction when I'm controlling you. He has to basically adduct his hip, so he's going to try and push his leg inwards like this, and it's going to be really hard. Now be careful, your opponent's going to be trying to swim their foot either underneath, or they're going to try and go over the top. So you don't want to stay here for too long. So I go here, I control one arm, and then I do the same thing to the other side. Like so. Now that I'm here, I'm ready to start to turn the hips to one side and start to attack my pass. Right, so clearing the feet off the biceps, and now I'm going to start to look at redirecting the hips. So I'm almost punching the legs wide, so I'm always punching forwards and outwards here. And the leg that I'm going to pin to the mat, I'm going to be punching forwards after I've done this. And the leg that I'm looking to get around, I'm basically going to be opening it out, redirecting it, and tucking it underneath this armpit here. And in the process of this, I'm getting ready to walk my feet back, do a big hip hinge, so that I can dodge his foot, so that his foot doesn't connect to my hips. And then once I'm here, I need to sprint towards this hand here to pin his legs down to the mat. And now I've single-sided his hips, and now I'm looking at either finishing with my basic bullfighter pass, where I run towards his head, or finishing with my leg drag. One other setup that might help you guys out a lot with your redirection is essentially trying to stack your opponent first, and then as you feel them push back from the stack, you can help redirect and turn their hips away and go for your bullfighter. Once I make my grips, I'm going to try and scoop my elbows underneath my opponent's calves. I'm going to start to punch up like this. If nothing happens, I can start to stack my opponent and work for a pass from here. But as Hamish feels me start to stack him, he's going to start to flatten his hips back down to the mat. And this is exactly what I want. I want him to have his hips flat. Okay, because like what we said before, it's a lot easier for us to bullfight someone when their hips are flat, and a lot harder to bullfight someone when their hips are raised and their abdominals are engaged. So here, he starts to flatten his hips, and I'm going to start to open, flaring my elbows, opening his hips, and then I'm going to start to redirect this leg here. So I'm going to start to shoot my hips back, redirect the leg. Now I'm around his legs, I'm on the outside of his legs. His shin is tucked underneath my armpit, and I'm in my Superman position here. I can start to punch this leg all the way down to the mat. And now from here, I can start to work for my leg drag or my bullfighter pass. I ideally don't want to progress through my bullfighter pass when my opponent's hips are facing me. Now that Hamish's hips are facing me, it basically means it's going to be easier for him to track me with his hips and his feet. So from here, even though he doesn't have his feet on the inside, if Hamish just balls up and he frames me with his right arm and his left hand frames the outside of his knee, it's going to be really hard for me to turn his hips away. If I try and turn his hips away from here, his elbow is reinforcing his knee and his hip. If I try to drive in towards him, because he's got his arm locked out, it's going to be really hard for me to actually connect chest on chest. So if I try to run around, this is probably the next thing people are thinking. If he really balls up and crunches in at his abs, when I try to run around, it pretty much just spin all the way through And in that process, he can actually start to pummel his feet back to my biceps. So again, I try to bullfighter, he frames, and he squares back up. When his hips are facing away, if he tries to use this exact same framing method, it's going to be a lot harder because he's essentially turning his upper body towards me, but his lower body away. So this is really not ideal. A better option for him here would be to use that like a one-arm throw defense where our opponent inverts away from us. So looking at the leg drag finish for the bullfighter, when I start to redirect the legs and I run into this frame here, it means that I can't progress past the line of Hamish's hips, which is a good indicator that I should go for the leg drag. Now, some people will think, oh, why can't I just try and bust through the frame? You can try this, and it's not to say that it won't work, but as I start to run into the frame, it's actually a lot harder for me to keep my weight through Hamish's hips. And so now what he can start to do using this frame, so this frame is going to stop me from progressing forward, and the more I force it, the more my weight comes off the hips. And now Hamish can start to invert away from me, and then bring his legs back in front. Once I redirect the legs, and I pin one leg to one side, and I feel this frame come in, I'm going to start to walk my legs towards Hamish's bottom leg, like so. I'm trying to connect my lower shin to his calf, and I'm trying to punch this grip past my armpit. It's going to be quite hard to get it past the armpit, but again, we're just trying to put as much pressure on the guard player's hips as possible here. So once I get here, I'm really starting to turn Hamish's hips away from me with the leg drag. When I'm ready to finish the pass, all I'm going to look to do is let go of the bottom pant, and then switch my grip from the bottom pant to this near side collar, like so. And my arms are crossing over like an X, like this. Once I'm here, I want to let go of the pant grip and grab the drawstring. So I want to get a thumb grip inside the drawstring. So let's move over to this side, like so. And I just want to make sure that this top knee is really sandwiched between my armpit and my upper thigh of this leg here. In terms of head positioning, I'm looking to get my head towards the same shoulder of the collar grip, like so. So I'm kind of using like a tripod finish to this leg drag. And what I'm trying to do with this grip is I'm really trying to not let the hips roll over to this side. So I'm constantly punching his hips through. So I'm doing like a hip punch, or as one of the guys that I train with at immersion says, an ass punch. So that it makes it really hard for Hamish to square his hips back up with me. Once I'm here, I'm just walking past this hip line, and I know that I'm past once I feel this my back knee go in line with my drawstring grip, like so. Now from here, looking to hug the head, or pick up the tricep and finish my pass. Okay, so once I can get this leg to touch the floor, it's going to be really hard for my opponent to actually pummel this leg in. As I do this, I'm starting to punch this leg past my armpit, and realistically, you're not going to be able to punch it all the way through. You're probably going to be able to go to here, because your opponent is going to be staying really tight with his knee to his chest. Now from here, I'm looking to walk all the way around, and see I'm keeping my hand locked out. Once I get here, I'm looking to let go and hug my opponent's head and finish the pass. Now, a common thing that can happen with the bullfighter pass is as we start to walk around to one side, our opponent will start to stiff arm. So usually it's with the sleeve grip here. So grab a sleeve grip. And my opponent is going to look to sit up, and he's basically looking to, let's move a bit more this way. He's basically looking to punch my arm across my body, and it actually makes it really hard for me to walk towards my opponent because my arm is pushed across my center line. So there's actually a point in this pass where you actually want to let go of this grip so that you can focus on hugging the head, and also so that you don't get your arm pushed across your center line. As I start to walk around and I feel the stiff arm come through, I open my hand out so that when I open my hand out, my arm is not past my center line anymore. And I can open my hand, so keep the grip. And now, even if my opponent holds on, their stiff arm is basically quite irrelevant here. There's no point in someone stiff arming my arm out here. And now from here I can land chest on chest, and I can either swing this hand to the head, or if you keep holding the grip, I can use my shin to fold over the bicep, hug the head, and block the hip. So if my opponent isn't fighting to keep his knees to his chest, it's really easy for me to just turn his hips to one side and also pull his knees away from his chest. But you'll see here, if Hamish really keeps his knees tight to his chest, when I try to pull his knees away from his chest, he actually goes with it, okay? So essentially I'm starting to spin him. So a lot of you guys will see people attack the bullfighter where they spin their opponent. You can only really do this if your opponent is trying to keep his knees really tight to his chest. The other way you could make someone spin is if you force their knees to their chest and then start to spin them. Okay? So if I start to pull Hamish's knee away from his chest and he really crunches his abdominals in, when I start to pull, I start to spin him. Coming back. So he's essentially doing half of the job for me. When I start to spin him, I can actually start to turn his hips away from me. Now I can use this hand here to actually help guide Hamish to turning his hips to the far side if he really keeps his knees tight to his chest. So as I start to pull and he spins with, I start to use my other hand to punch, and now I'm almost in the north-south position. I want to make sure that this hand, let's turn it this way, when I land here, that this hand is in front of his knee so that he can't pull this knee to his chest. And now I can simply punch this leg to the mat and hug his head. So this is the spinning variation of the bullfighter. So now I'm just going to go into my ideal, my favorite bullfighter grip variation. So it's basically like a hybrid of the grip. So I've got one grip on the pant, and the other grip of the leg that I'm trying to punch away is the C grip. And I'll explain why I find this one works really well for me. So I find that it's harder for someone to pummel their feet when you C grip. But then, so if I have a pant grip, it's easier for my opponent to pummel their feet. If I have a C grip, it's a bit harder. But then, in regards to dragging the leg away, I find it a lot easier to drag and punch my opponent's leg away if I have a pant grip. If I have a C grip, I find it really awkward to drag my opponent's leg away. Sometimes if I go thumb down, I get a better drag, but for me, nothing beats the pant grip when we're talking about trying to punch someone's leg away. So my C grip is the one that's stopping the pummel and also punching the leg away. And my pant grip is the one that's basically separating the knee away from the torso. So if we were to look at the sequence again, starting from the feet on the biceps, I want to pummel like we've spoken about before, and I'm going to C grip the leg that I'm pinning, and I'm going to get a pad grip on the leg that I'm redirecting. And what I'm going to try to do here is the exact same thing that I showed before. I'm going to try and basically take this leg in a circle, in an arc, as I start to redirect it away and tuck it underneath my armpit. Keep this knee tucked to your chest. Once I get here, after I've done my little hip hinge and redirection, I'm trying to sprint again towards this hand so I can run his hips to turn away from me. And now I can start to pin this leg and look to hug the head. One more time. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with the content that I'm posting. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can even direct message me on my Instagram page or my Facebook page.